Hello, I'm going to explain why there are nakshatras. This is a discovery made in just the past week, and it explains very clearly why there are 27 divisions of the sky, and each division is exactly 13 degrees 20 minutes in length. So in the chart wheel on the left, we show the 12 zodiac signs, each one exactly 30 degrees in length. In the second ring, the 27 nakshatras. And according to the ancient Vedic astrology tradition, each of these nakshatras is divided into four subsections called padas. So, for example, the first nakshatra called Ashwini, this one here, this pink one that begins where Aries begins, it has these four signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, that are subdivisions, a length of 3 degrees 20 minutes each, and then the next nakshatra continues right through with Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. These padas are actually also the Navamsha signs. So what we discovered, very exciting in the past week, is why the nakshatras exist and why the padas exist. And this discovery is the next step in a long series of discoveries that started in October 2014. So on this slide, I'm showing a list of videos, tutorial videos, all available on YouTube, just as this one is, on the sacred geometry that underlies astrology. So these discoveries began in October 2014, where prime numbers, these building blocks of numbers, were found to be embedded in many ideas in astrology. Prime numbers form the zodiac and many other details in astrology. So exaltations and joys, Hellenistic bounds, many other things conform. They're structured the way prime numbers are structured. And this has largely gone unnoticed. And then some other astrologers were pointing out how the golden ratio is involved in some things in astrology and the Fibonacci numbers. So in October, November, and December, a small group of astrologers started presenting this information and their discoveries on a sacred geometry behind astrology and how this sacred geometry is formed in detail, not just philosophically and in vague ways. And then through 2015 to 2018, I would periodically notice something, read something, discover something, and make another video on this sacred geometry and how these basic ideas in astrology are created. And we now understand very specifically and clearly where these things come from. And then this month, I'm making this video in July 2019, a new wave of discoveries have come in. And the first video I made this month is on vibrational astrology and the physics of Nassim Harmein. Second one is the scientific basis of the sidereal zodiac. And this one is why there are nakshatras. This video, why there are nakshatras, I think is one of the most important videos in this entire series. I think it's a game changer. I think it's very compelling. And if you want to catch up on you might say the history, the development of these ideas and how they apply in different areas, I've put in a larger bold font some of the tutorial videos that I think are the most critical and powerful of all of these. So watching all of these videos, if that feels overwhelming, but you do want to dig back and learn more about this, these are the ones that I would recommend. The Fibonacci numbers, Zodiac Signs, planet ladder, and elements and modes. This was made in December 2014. It summarizes, includes, and expands upon some of the previous ideas. If you watch all of the videos, though, of course, you're going to get information that's not in this one. This one, made in April 2016, How Fibonacci Numbers Create the Zodiac, is a classic video. It brings it all together in a very compelling way. And How Astrology Works, a New Theoretical Framework, from December 2016, also very powerful. And these other videos on the fractal nature of secondary progressions, crystalline and fluid dynamics, and the 3 that are made this week. So I just wanted to give you a quick background, a context for how this latest discovery builds upon the previous work. And so this theory of where astrology comes from, where zodiacs come from, and other subdivisions like decanates and nakshatras and so on, started in October 2014. And is this theory good? Well, a good theory will organize and synthesize existing observations into a simpler model. Well, it definitely does that. But also important for a good theory is that it makes predictions of behavior and facilitates new discoveries. And that is underway because from these ideas, we've come up with ideas on exactly how to progress houses, how to do the secondary progressed houses, and many other details. And in this video, we're going to show how this ancient idea of nakshatras is built into the very fabric of the universe. It's amazing. It's amazing because somehow these ancient astrologers knew this. They developed this idea. Now, the nakshatras are often called a lunar zodiac. There are 27 of them. It takes the moon 27 1/3 days to go through the zodiac. Maybe they just guessed because it was based on a lunar cycle and roughly how far the moon moves each day. We don't know, but there's something more precise, more specific, and more, you might say, contemporary, that's in tune with the latest understanding of how reality works, that shows that nakshatras actually really exist and the padas exist. So this I think is very, very exciting, and I think is one of the most important videos in this series of videos that shows these discoveries. Okay, with that background, let's start digging into this. So what we're looking at is this chart wheel, happens to be of Paramahansa Yogananda, happens to be in the sidereal zodiac, and when you use the sidereal zodiac, there's an ayanamsha used, and there's a particular ayanamsha used. So that's what you're looking at in case you're curious. But what's most important for our interest right now is to describe where these nakshatras come from, how they're created, and how the padas are created. Now, as I mentioned, there are 27 nakshatras, and there are 4 padas in each nakshatra. In the bottom right here, I mentioned that 27 times 4 equals 108. So there are 108 padas. Padas are also known as Navamsha signs. Just making sure we're all together and we understand what it is we're looking at. Okay, and as you know, nakshatras are a kind of zodiac used in Vedic astrology. But instead of 12 signs of 30 degrees each, there are 27 nakshatras with a length of 13 degrees, 20 minutes each. Okay, now, how are nakshatras created? They're created from fundamental forces in nature, and they are created exactly the same way that zodiac signs are created. So let's review how signs are created, which is also how nakshatras are created. There are 3 things that create zodiac signs and create the nakshatras. Number 1, spin. Everything is spinning. There is spin at every level, from the subatomic level to the galaxies are swirling around their galactic center. Everything has spin. It's not necessarily a physical spin, but some form of angular momentum. Nassim Harmein, who is developing this new physics, has summarized one of his formulas as Einstein with a twist. So at the very heart of reality in Einstein's formula, there is a twist factor that he's added. This spin, this angular momentum. Spin is at the heart of nature. And it is this spin that creates the zodiac. How does spin create the zodiac? What we started proposing in in that early period when we started making these videos is that somehow embedded in spin are number sequences. This is the big innovative idea. And the number sequences are basically prime numbers and Fibonacci number sequences that get embedded in spin. How they're embedded in spin, exactly how that happens, we don't know, but they're there. Every time you get an answer to a question, it raises more questions. But this is what we're proposing. And these embedded numbers in spin create structures in space. And these structures we can call the sacred geometry that underlies our physical world. The third point about understanding where zodiac signs and nakshatras come from is that space defines matter. Space is a real thing. It's a more fundamental thing. It exists at what you could call a higher dimensional quantum field level, where you can think of it as a kind of ether that does not slow down by electromagnetic waves, or in some of the Vedantic philosophy, it's referred to as Akash or Akasha as space. Akash means sky, but in some contexts it means more than sky. It means this space, this kind of beingness that's behind nature. And space defines matter. As Nassim says and other physicists are saying, there's like a little jiggle, a little certain frequency within space that makes it appear as matter. So space is the underlying reality, and in space there are structures. Space is not this amorphous blank slate. There are structures in it. And from those structures, many things in our physical world develop. This is the model, this is the concept. Okay, now, let me review briefly how Fibonacci numbers create the zodiac. You're probably familiar with Fibonacci numbers. I've listed them here: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. You take the last two numbers, like 8 and 13, add them together, you get 21. 13 plus 21 equals 34, 21 plus 34 equals 55, and so on. It's a growth cycle. Now, what happens is the universe is based on frequency and vibration, is we put the Fibonacci numbers into a frequency. And the way that's done mathematically is very simple. We just subtract a multiple of some number, whatever frequency we want to base it on. It's called a modulus function. And so if you do it in a beat of 10, for example, when the Fibonacci number goes above 8, it goes to 13, we subtract 10, we get 3. 21, subtract 10, 2 times you get 1. 34 becomes 4. You end up with this sequence. We've taken this sequence of numbers. It's called a Pisano period, a Fibonacci number in a certain beat. This is a modulus 10 Pisano period, and we put them around a circle. So here's 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 3, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 3, 1, and something amazing happens. We see the zodiac. There are 4 zeros in this sequence, right on the cardinal signs, the beginning of the cardinal signs. There are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 number 5s right at the beginning of the other zodiac signs. There is symmetry around the cardinal points. We call those antitia and contrantitia. And there are many other patterns embedded in this sequence that describe our zodiac. So our zodiac is created by spin, by vibrations of Fibonacci numbers we call Pisano periods. And where is it? It exists in Akash, Akasha, or space, in this sacred geometry that underlies our world. This is where astrology structures like zodiacs come from. And it's where nakshatras come from. And that's what we discovered in this past week. So here's how we discovered where nakshatras come from. We look at this table. This is a table from Wikipedia. What this table shows is that if you take Fibonacci numbers and you put them into a beat, Again, that's called a Pisano period. How many numbers will be in the sequence? Let me go back to the previous slide. So when we do a modulus 10 on the Fibonacci numbers, we get 60 numbers. And those 60 numbers will repeat over and over again forever. And we lay them out, and we see that they're creating the zodiac. And here on this, in this table, under plus 10, what this is on the left, it's a 0, plus 10 is 10. The 10 Pisano period has the 60 numbers. That's what this is showing. If you put the Fibonacci numbers into a modulus 9, you'll get 24 numbers. And in some of those early videos that I just showed you, that long list of tutorial videos I made, I show the modulus 9 Pisano period, the 24 numbers, and it creates the zodiac. And the modulus 8 creates 12 sections, the 12 sections of the zodiac, and it even has the elements and modes. So whether you do a modulus 8, a modulus 9, or a modulus 10, you get the zodiac. Wow. Now, what about all of the other modulus functions? So what this table is showing, the first row is the first 12 Pisano periods. Then it says 12 plus 1. This is the 13th, 14th, etc. So it shows the first 144 Pisano periods. It's more specifically showing how many numbers are in the sequence created by those Pisano periods. So far we looked at 8, 9, and 10, and all 3 times we find our zodiac. Incredible. But what about Pisano period 11? It's kind of an odd, quirky number, but what if I put the Fibonacci numbers in a beat of 11? What happens? Well, if I do a nice number like 12, look what happens. If I do a Pisano period of 12 or 24 or 36 or 48, any multiple of 12, I get a multiple of 12 numbers in the sequence. Now, this is very curious. You have to remember that all we're doing is taking the last 2 numbers and adding them together, putting them in a beat, finding out that there's, just by calculating it all out and then seeing what happens, there's a sequence. So the very curious thing that happens is that the sequence, the number of items in the sequence is closely related to the Pisano period number. It just works out that way. It's a kind of beauty and elegance in the nature of things. So here what I've done is I scanned through this and looked at all numbers that are a multiple of 12. For example, 60 equals 12 times 5. 48 equals 12 times 4. And so on. 120 equals 12 times 10. And it looks like maybe a little over half, I didn't count them, of all of these first 144 Pisano periods are multiples of 12. And if we laid them out, I haven't done it yet, it's rather tedious. If you take, say, the 120 numbers, this is the 24 plus 5, the 24 plus 6, the 30th, the modulus 30 Pisano period, and you lay out those 120 numbers around a circle, you're probably going to find the zodiac again. You're going to probably find an interesting sequence of numbers at every 30 degrees. So in many of these rhythms, these beats of growth cycle, the Fibonacci growth cycle, create the zodiac. But not all of them. Not all of them do. What about this one that's 16, 18? Are they creating other structures? And should I look at all of these? It would be a lot of work and take a lot of time. Are some of these particularly interesting, and what structures do they create? So I picked out a few that I thought should be the most important. And wow, there are the nakshatras. So what I'm saying is that the Pisano periods create the zodiac multiple times through many different rhythms and beats. We know that the 8, 9, and 10 rhythms create the zodiac. But there's at least one very, very important beat, and it creates the nakshatras. That's what was discovered this past week. And here's how the discovery was made. Out of all of these vibrations and beats, which ones would be the most important? Maybe the ones with lower numbers? What other intuition do we have? What else can we guess? Well, I guessed that the squares, numbers squared, and in a second I'll tell you why, but let me just show you what I'm saying. The 25 Pisano, 5 times 5, the 7 times 7, 49, the 8 times 8, the 9 times 9, 10 times 10, 11 times 11, and 12 times 12. These are the ones that I thought would be especially important. Why square functions? Why would they be important? And, well, I have it as my point number 4. Let's jump over to point number 4. Square functions, I think of them as fractal. That's just my own way of thinking of them. When I see a number squared, like 5 times 5 is 25, boom, I think those are fractals. Why do I think of them as fractals? Because you've taken the number and multiplied it by itself. You've created the same structure, the same frequency of 5, and you've done 5 within 5. And that's the basic idea of fractals, is a self-repeating pattern. And also, square functions appear everywhere in nature. You can take the most fundamental thing like gravity. Gravity, like so many things, works by a square function. The force of gravity decreases with distance. Does it decrease proportionally with distance? It decreases by the square of the distance. Are we surprised? No, because so many things in nature work by square functions, a basic fractal function. So because square functions are ubiquitous, they appear all over the place, and that makes sense, and we're dealing with astrology, which is a fractal paradigm, I just guessed, and I put in bold red these vibrations that I thought would be particularly important. I'm just guessing, but I'm thinking the 25 modulus function has 100 numbers. The 49 modulus, that's the 7 times 7, has 112, has 110. And then I looked at these numbers and I discovered that the count, the number of items in the sequence is directly related to our base number. So if you do a modulus 7 squared, you'll get 7 times 16 numbers in the sequence. If you do a Pisano period based on 9 squared, you'll get 9 times 24 numbers in the sequence. What this tells me is that Mother Nature is designed to keep a stable, powerful, fundamental frequency in these Pisano periods. When you do the fractal level of 9, the 81 Pisano period, you're going to get 9 times 24 numbers in the sequence. And most likely, if we lay them around the circle, just like we did for the Pisano 10, which gave us 60 numbers, we're going to find beautiful patterns. Mother Nature is designed so that these growth numbers, the Fibonacci growth numbers, put into a beat will create beautiful, symmetrical, intricate patterns. And those patterns are in space. They're at the fundamental level, created by the fundamental forces, and they underlie our life and create the sacred geometry. So these particular Pisano periods are especially interesting to me. And one that I noticed that stood out is the 9 squared, making 9 times 24 numbers, 216, and 216 is our 108 padas times 2. So it's taken each pada and put them in halves. And we see this very often because many of these numbers are 24 or 48. They're multiples of the basic 12. And here we have a doubling of the basic 108. It's also a doubling. No, it's not a doubling. It's an 8 times our nakshatras. And maybe if I lay out around a circle these 216 numbers, I will find a clear sequence lining up at the beginning of each nakshatra. And when I saw this, I thought to myself, you know what? I bet it does. So it's just a manual process. I just took a circle, a zodiac, put all the numbers around it, looked at it, and see what happens. I first had to write a little software program that would generate the sequence of numbers because I couldn't find it online. I wrote the little program. It created the sequence of numbers. I put them around a circle. Voila, I found the nakshatras. And I'm going to show it to you on the next slides. Well, what I'm saying is we've confirmed, again, that another fundamental idea in astrology is created out of the vibrations and frequencies embedded in spin. Okay, so let's look at it. So here I'm showing the 216 and saying what I just said. This is exactly what happens. We'll see the pattern, and here it is. Now, at first it's a little overwhelming. Let me look at it because there's 216 numbers, a lot of numbers. So, and let me show you the numbers on the next slide. These are the 216 numbers. So I wrote a little program, a little software program to generate the numbers in a Pisano period, any Pisano period, and I ran it for the 9 times 9, the 81 Pisano period, and these are the 216 numbers. I put them in 4 columns, with each column having 2 numbers. So there are 27 rows. I've just organized it according to the rhythm of the numbers. So the 81 modulus Pisano numbers means we get to 81 and we start at 0 again. So it's 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 24, 34, 55. Those are the first Fibonacci numbers. The next number should be 89, but it's above 81, so we subtract 81, we get 8. And we continue. And we end up with this sequence of numbers, and there happen to be 216, and they will repeat forever. Now, what I've done on the left is I went into the Sirius 3.0 software. I created a chart wheel with no planets in it. I selected 0 Aries houses, so I have 0 Aries on the left. I selected the nakshatras. I selected the Navamsa ring, so I could select all that in the software. I didn't have to hand draw anything. And then I started putting the numbers around. So 0, 1, 3, 8. 0, 1, 3, 8. I took every other number so that I have 108, half of 216 is 108, to put the 108 numbers. So I skipped the second half, figuring that the second half of each one is probably of secondary importance. The basic rhythm should be in the Navamsa signs. So here it is, 0, 1, 3, 8, 21, 0, 1, 3, 8, 21. So when I get to 21, I'm at the beginning of the next nakshatra. I put that in a larger font, and then I drew a little box around it. So this is those numbers that are in this table drawn around. And just so I could see it clearly, I color-coded the first pada of each nakshatra in a dark blue, the second one in red, and the third one in green. And I put the Pisano period number at the beginning of each nakshatra in a larger font with the box around it. So if I go down this first column, 0, 21, 15, 0, 21, 15, 36, and so on. So this is the rhythm of the numbers. All I did is write a program to create the sequence of numbers, and then I arranged them in these columns. I put them around. Let me go back to my previous slide. And there is the pattern. This slide here has my notes so I can remember so I don't skip any of these important points. But the first thing we notice, or at least one of the things we notice, is that the beginning of each nakshatra, 0, 21, 15, 36, if I take these numbers and I do a modulus 9, which is our base, this is all based on 9, we're using a 9 squared Pisano period, and if I put those in a modulus 9, there's a trick for doing modulus 9, which is what is done in numerology. You can just add the numbers. 2 plus 1 equals 3, 1 plus 5 equals 6. That's a little mathematical trick that actually does the same thing as subtracting out multiples of 9. And in this inner part, I show the modulus 9, and there's a perfect rhythm to it, with the only exception being the very first number, which instead of 9 is 0. But otherwise, it's 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6. The nakshatras are laid out in a rhythm of 9, 3, 6. That's what I have in these notes in the center of this diagram. First pada is in a 9, 3, 6 sequence, except for the very first nakshatra, which is 0. Since we're doing the base 9, 9 and 0 are actually the same thing. But to make this one special, as clearly the beginning point, it becomes 0 instead of 9. What's also fascinating about this is we're going to get to the number 9 after 3 nakshatras. So it's 9, 3, 6, 9. Well, this nakshatra is the beginning of the next Navamsa zodiac. So there are 9 Navamsa zodiacs around the outside. These are also the padas, and each one begins with a 9. So it's 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6. It's like a downbeat on 9 at the beginning of each of the 9 Navamsa zodiacs. What we're seeing is that these beats and rhythms in nature, built out of spin and these numbers emanating out, create the structure in space that we call nakshatras. They are frequencies, beats, and rhythms. And of course, 936 is, you take the square root of 9. 9 is actually 3 times 3, and they are the 369. So you get this beautiful building, this beautiful fractal development from 3 to 9 to 81 to every 40 degrees coming on the downbeat of 9 to having the 0 special starting point that's like the trigger of the whole structure. So it's these rhythms and frequencies and consistencies that are perfect, not approximate, that are creating the structure in space that we call the nakshatras. Now the second pada of every nakshatra is equal to 1 when we do a modulus 9 function on it. So for example, the second nakshatra, Taurus, the second pada within the first nakshatra, Ashwini, which is Taurus, the Fibonacci number is 3. Is 1. I'm sorry, it's 1. 0, 1, 3. It's 1. The second pada of Bharani, the second nakshatra, is 55. 5 plus 5 is 10. Do a modulus 10 on a modulus 9 on that, you get 1. So 10 becomes 1. And so on. 73 is the second nakshatra of the is the second pada of the third nakshatra. The second pada of every nakshatra equals 1. The third pada is in a 396 sequence. So if you go around and you look at the red numbers, this is simple. I'm making it more complicated than it is. Just look at the red numbers. 3, 63, 42, 48, 27, 6. Do a modulus 9 function on those, and you're going to find out that it's in the rhythm 396. Almost the same as the first pada. The 9 and 3 are reversed. And the fourth pada always equals 8. When we find that there is this perfect rhythm, perfect consistency of numbers spread throughout this beating system, this rhythmic system of nature, this pulsating life force of nature, then that becomes the foundation for the structures in space. So this is what astrology is based on. Astrology, the zodiac signs and nakshatras are not based on the stars. They're based on vibration and frequency generated through the fundamental force of spin. And then, of course, you'll continue to find beautiful and elegant results if you combine the first and third nakshatras by adding them. You'll get 12. So 9 plus 3 is 12. 3 plus 9 is 12. 6 plus 6 is 12. So the first and third padas are complementary. 3 complements 9. 6 complements 6. You'll always get these incredible balancing acts, this intricate, beautiful system is created. This is the same thing we saw with the zodiac signs. And we're seeing it with the nakshatras. The nakshatras are just this beautiful, elegant structure in space built from 9. 9 creates this. And also, let me read my notes here. If we take the second and fourth padas, second pada is always equal to 1. Fourth pada of each nakshatra is always equal to 8. 1 plus 8 equals 9. Then if you add all 4 of these, you add the 12 from this plus the 9. 12 is equal to 3 in a modulus 9. So you get 3 plus 9, and you're back to 12 again. So they all reduce basically to 12, and 12 equals 3, and 3 is the square root of the 9. So you're going to always end up with a 9 or a 3 as a combined frequency result. Okay. And then while all that's going on with this perfect balancing and rhythms and interweaving of all these patterns, we also, again, I just want to repeat, that the 9 beat of the nakshatras coming at the beginning of each Navamsha zodiac. This is the intricate, beautiful, sacred geometry created by the beating heart of life, the spinning, whirling dervish of life. As it evolves and grows and expands and goes into a dance, this dance of life on different rhythms, and the 9 rhythm, which is based on the 3 rhythm. 3 squared is 9. 9 squared is 81. They create this intricate patterning that's called the nakshatras and the padas within them, all created out of 3 simple things: spin, Pisano periods, actually it's just those 2 things, and what is their medium? They're manifesting in space, Akash. They're manifesting in space. The underlying, it's kind of like an ether. In physics, they introduced the idea of ether, but they found out that ether does not slow down electromagnetic waves, and then they decided, well, there's no ether. Well, there is a kind of ether, a kind of space. It just doesn't slow down electromagnetic waves, where these structures, or you can call it the quantum field. Many different ways to look at it, or a spiritual world, whatever you want. There's many ways to imagine it, but it's an underlying space that creates matter and it has these structures in it. Okay. Now, if we look at the offbeat, so far we've only looked at every other, the beginning of each pada. If we look at what I call the offbeat, I suspected that these would be offbeats because I suspected that, these nakshatras probably really exist. I don't know how the heck the ancients figured this out. I mean, somehow they did, but these would be somehow less significant. It's like the flip side, the tail side of a coin. And sure enough, when you look at the offbeat, which is the second column here, for example, the second half of the first nakshatra, let me say this whole thing, it gets a little complicated. The second half of the first pada of each nakshatra is this column. And if you put it into a modulus 9 function, you'll get 1, 7, because 3 plus 4 is 7. 13, because 5 plus 8 is 13. 13, 1 plus 3 is 4. So this is a 1, 7, 4. And we're back to 1 again. 7, 4. 1, 7, 4. So when you put a modulus 9 function on this, you'll get a sequence of 1, 7, 4. The second pada is always 2, 8, 5. Third is 5, 8, 2. And the fourth is 4, 7, 1. The second half of every pada has a completely consistent rhythm going all the way around the zodiac, no exceptions. And again, if you start adding numbers, you'll get beautiful patterns. If you add the first and fourth padas, this is actually the second half of the fourth padas, you'll get 5, 5, 5. You add the second half of the second and third, you'll get 7, 7, 7. When you add all of them, you get 12, 12, 12, and you're back to the 12, 12, 12 again. It's fantastic. And what happens is that the second half of each pada is not based on 9. It throws in 7s and 5s. And this, if you study this long enough, it's incredibly beautiful. Because what happens is that within each structure in space, there'll be this consistent theme. It's like listening to a piece of music and it's in a certain key, it has a certain scale that it's being played in. It's like, you're in 9, man. This is the land of 9. But just to make it a little bit interesting, you might see on these offbeats, something else comes in. A very basic and fundamental counterpoint, you might say. And in this case, it's 5 7s that come in. And you could also say the 4 and the 8 as well. So they come into it on the offbeat with perfect consistency. But when you total all those up, they end up back into 9. So it's a very beautiful, elegant tapestry that's created by the fundamental beats of life being emanated from spin. Now, I know this is a radically new way of looking at life. We started developing these ideas in 2014. Now it's the year 2019. A lot of people have not heard about this. As our understanding increases, we're understanding this in greater and greater detail. And our theory is able to incorporate and explain more and more things. So it's a whole new world of understanding astrology as structures in space. So a few concluding remarks. To summarize, nakshatras and padas are structures in space. They're not caused by stars. Interesting, because some people are looking at the ancient Vedic literature and noticing that the nakshatras, they're called asterisms, small groups of stars, and they're looking at the nakshatras even as not being specifically 13 degrees 20 minutes, but they are 13 degrees 20 minutes. And here's the thing to remember. Space defines matter. Matter does not define space. So there's structures in space. The padas, which are also identical to the Navamsa signs, are also created by vibrational patterns, as seen in harmonic charts. So when you do harmonic charts, if you do the Navamsa chart, which is the 9th harmonic chart, Saptamsha chart with the seventh harmonic chart, you'll also see the signs there. Now, getting back to the relationship of stars to nakshatras, in bold here, let me read this because this is very important. The fixed stars in a nakshatra, for example, let's take Regulus, which is in a nakshatra called Magha, which is regal, Regulus the king. Why is Regulus regal? Ptolemy speculated that it has to do with the color of the stars affect them. That idea has been carried down. What makes Regulus regal? What is it about it? Is it just like it's a loca, or it just has this quality to it? That would seem the most obvious thing. And what I'm proposing is that the reason why Regulus is regal has really nothing to do with Regulus. It has to do with where it is. It's that nakshatra that's regal, that area of space. Because, I'll repeat this mantra again, space defines matter. Matter does not define space. Space is the Akasha. It's this quantum field. It's this underlying thing that is the basis of matter. You jiggle space a little bit, you get what we call matter. Space has structures. This is a more spiritual level of life. Astrology is based on a spiritual dimension. It's based on these structures in space which underlie matter. So it's this space. If we analyze, we're still at the beginning of understanding all this. If we start analyzing each one of these nakshatras and how it's situated within this vibrational system, we will eventually discover why that nakshatra is regal. And anything in that regal area becomes regal. And the stars, these condensations of energy, because energy equals matter, these certain frequencies that condense space into matter, these huge burning stars, become like manifestations, like points of expression of that space. And in the sidereal zodiac, Regulus will just stay in Magha for almost forever because it has such a very slow motion of its own. But if a star is near the edge of a nakshatra, and if it was to move over, may take thousands of years to move into another nakshatra, then its quality would change according to the nakshatra. Okay, well, I just wanted to present you with this idea that it's structures in space that are the fundamental thing we're dealing with. So that's it, my friends. I just make this little concluding remark about if you go to our website, astrosoftware.com, and you go to conference and click on the link to the conference, you'll see information about the next conference. It's every year, typically in late March in Gainesville, Florida, which is in North Florida. And if you want to experience the latest developments in these understanding of what we call vibrational astrology and all the details of the research here, we're just presenting some of the theoretical backgrounds, but we also in the conference emphasize the empirical research where we're finding that astrology actually works. So this whole new wave, then come to the conference and be a part of this. Okay, my friends, I hope you found that interesting. It's very exciting to me that this theory is incorporating more and more things. And for me personally, to find out that the nakshatras are built into the fabric of the universe, similar to the way zodiac signs are, I've been putting off really studying nakshatras in detail and trying to incorporate them in my interpretation. Well, I'm done putting that off because they've got to be important. All of these Vedic astrologers are not deluded. There's something to them, and by understanding where they come from and how they work and how they function, it's going to help us zero in to exactly how they work. Okay, thank you very much, my friends, for listening. God bless. Namaste.